Hi, welcome to Quirky Queen's Journals. My name's Kirsten. So today we're using the Big Shot as a printing press, which is not what it's designed for, but that's what I bought it for, to use as a sort of cheap printing press alternative. I've made myself some sort of foam stamps with the kids' foam. I've got a couple of linocuts here, some printer paper that I've just made smaller, and a towel. Now there's other media we're going to use as well. So I'll quickly show you how I made those foam stamps. It's pretty self-explanatory. This grey bit is chipboard from the back of a paper pad. Just used my pokey tool that I use to lift my stencils off the gel plate normally. And you can just draw into it, press into it with wee dots, do wee circles. You can also use a pen that doesn't work anymore, or a pencil, just anything really that will put some indentations into this kids' foam, which is very cheap. I got about 30 A5 sheets for like £4 in the range in the UK. Let's get started. Soft pastels. Now what I'll do is I'll do a run through of the Big Shot for this one, but it's just a repetitive process from then on in. So what I like about this is we can put a range of colours down. Purple probably wasn't the best to see on the purple kids foam. Right, and a bit of this yellow. I'm just going to put a bit of blue around as well. It's hard not to get it on the edges. Right, so I'm going to use this with a dry piece of paper, just 80 GSM printer paper. Obviously, the better the quality of the paper, you will get a better result. It's quite faint on this, but this is practice, and also we're doing it on the cheap. I have, we're a bit one-sided. Sorry, we're a bit even. Look at my dog hairs, they're everywhere. Going to go the other way. Okay, so this is the Big Shot, and you have to correct your depth. So I've put in one of the clear plates, the green plate, the normal big thick plate, put down a couple of sheets of printer paper, which is what you're going to use really to get your depth right, because for the linocut's thicker than the foam, so you would have to change your depth for that, but you just get used to it. So just the dry printer paper on top of that. Now I know I just need one sheet of this paper. And I'm just putting it through so you can feel the tension. So you don't want to force it. What I also find is if I've not put enough in, I can't roll it backwards and forwards. There's not enough tension. Okay, so that is how I'll be using the Big Shot for the duration of this video. But I'm putting it on the little table out the way. So there we go. Now that's soft pastel on the kids' foam, soft pastel on the linocut was like this. So it's a bit sharper, the edges obviously, but that's lovely and soft. And then obviously you can use different things as well, like materials. I'm not 100% sure. I've not tried corrugated cardboard or my mount board polystyrene stamps yet. I'm just looking at the different media we can use just now, so I'm going to write on that to show what it is. SP. So next up is pan pastel. Just giving this a rub with the tissue to try and make sure that it's not too much of it left. I'll use different colours from this. With the linocuts, I was just spraying them with water and washing them off. Oh, bright red. We'll need to use some of that. I mean, you could be more careful and keep that protected. I think I'm going to put a bit of the black on though, just because I've seen it. Even if I just do it around the edges. So these are just makeup sponges with the pan pastels. Okay. And again, I'm just going to use a dry sheet for this. Now, you could dampen the sheets and probably get a stronger result. But I'm just trying to keep this simple. Later on, we will be using damp sheets. So that's the pan pastel. It's almost like coloured pencil, isn't it? Oh, I'm thinking of trying a damp sheet of paper with that. When I'm making the paper damp, this is printer paper, it's quite fragile. It doesn't want to be wet. And then I'm just putting it between the towel, giving it a blot, trying not to get my fingers all over it. And just roll it through exactly the same as before. Okay, so you could see that the grey card didn't like the damp paper. And obviously it's a bit patchy where the wet was. But I like the result. And this is one I did earlier with pan pastel. This was on the linocut. I've obviously pressed lighter and used lighter colours. If this was a linocut, I'd spray it with water and this would wash off. But because it's the kids' foam stamp on chipboard that I've applied with a glue stick, I'm not spraying water on it. Drawing ink. So this is like Indian ink, because I was reading that some Indian inks have shellac in them, and this has shellac in it. Paintbrush. This dries fairly quickly, so you need to work fast. There's also getting ink in the indentations and doing it over the top gives different results. It's just taking a bit off. I just felt it was a bit excessive there. So we'll put this one on. This is why it's good to put papers down above and below on your big shot, because I've had too much ink and we've had a bit of a leak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this again, but this time I'm going to blot it. I'm also going to try and press lighter, even though I've just put it in the grooves there. Now obviously with proper printmaking, there are methods to be able to do this correctly. Oh, we got a nice one there. Right, I'm going to go and put it through. With practice and experience, you get used to what you're using, the paper you're using, the product you're using, and you know how much to put on. Okay. They're different. Obviously this one's much clearer and was more what I was expecting from the machine, but these would sit well together in an abstract painting. And this one, do you know, if you use them for collage paper, because they're kind of like repeating patterns, same colour but it's highlighting different parts of the pattern. We need to work on the drawing ink. When I did the drawing ink on the linocut, it was more like this. So it maybe just works better with the linocut as well. See if I had the same pattern in the linocut. It's 4 variations of the same pattern. I'm going to put that one aside because it's wet. So next up, we're going to use Posca pen. Again, it's acrylic paint. This is an acrylic paint pen, so we do need to move fairly quickly so that it doesn't dry. Okay. Maybe had a bit. I'm going to try it again with all the one colour. Right, I'm going to blot it first as well. I feel like it's still a bit much up here. See, we've got leakage up here. It is interesting though where it's sparser here. This is the Posca pen on the linocut. So next up is watercolor pencils. I don't think we're going to get this to work on the foam because all it's doing is indenting it. So I'm going to get out a linocut. I've made a little, it looks like an eye to me. But anyway, here it goes again. Kingfisher blue. Oh, another one that's not going to show up on this. Blue-grey. and pale pink. Damp piece of paper. Got the pencil lines a bit this time. So this was watercolour pencil on the linocut that I did last night. I think this time I'm going to spray the linocut. It's interesting, I know I'm going on a bit, but I think that it's I like the variations that you can achieve. You know, I think these are going on better now that the damp paper's been on that linocut and just made it a bit damper. Could spray this instead of the paper this time. To blot or not to blot? Let's not blot. Let's see how it goes. There we go. So, variation in results, but we like it. If your linocut is well used and covered in acrylic paint, the paper will stick to it. The pencils don't work on the foam because they're basically indenting it. A clean linocut is your friend for watercolour pencils, and maybe spraying it before you put the watercolour pencils on will give you somewhere in between here, these two. So next is children's poster paint. I'm going to do it on top of this here. The thing with this is it's very easy to put too much on. So I would make sure you've got plenty of paper around, you know, under and over to protect your machine. Okay, I'm also going to give it a bit of quick blot. I'm tidying these edges up because I like having sort of edge of lines, but I think these are just going to blur into each other in these bits. Poster paint doesn't dry as fast as acrylic paint. Maybe it takes, the stuff I'm using, it's maybe about 1.5 times as long to dry. Okay. We're using a dry sheet of paper. So I think there was still a bit much paint on it because even though I'd cleaned up the edges, we've had a bit of an overspill. It's also picked up some of that poster paint. Right, let's try that. Okay. There's also a risk of paper ripping with that one. Now, I love that. That's obviously picked up some of the Posca pen though. This was it on the linocut. I really love this though. That was definitely a less is more situation. Oil pastels. I'm just going going to use this one, it's dry. Now, the thing with using the oil pastels is you're not going to get this back off the kids' foam, really. So it's just to be aware that you probably won't be able to use this stamp for a, well, you could, but you're not going to get a pure, you'll have bits of the oil pastel impacting on how the stamp behaves. I don't want to overly blend it, just trying to get rid of the sort of sharper marks. Dry paper. Very similar to the pan pastels. Now, I think we should take a ghost print. There's the ghost print. So, the soft pastels, oil pastels and pan pastels are probably the easiest to use, the cleanest. This was on the linocut, the oil pastel and the ghost print. Now, this is much softer, so I think the foam, the oil pastel probably, this is a very hard surface that you're putting the oil pastel on, so you're more likely to get the line marks, I suppose, you know, the stroke of the oil pastel marks, whereas this is very soft. It's not as easy to blend them on the linocut. Water soluble oil pastels. So we're going to use these with damp paper. I'm assuming that water soluble crayons will behave the same way as these water soluble oil pastels. So they go on the foam. It feels nicer when it's going on the foam than it did on the linocut. Though there was nothing wrong with how it felt on the linocut. It's just, you can see the blending happening. It's more like doing it on a nice paper, I suppose. Let's do a bit of bright green. Right, so damp paper this time. So here goes. Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Obviously it's quite messy around the edges. Got a bit of texture in there with it too. I'm going to put a bit more on and then spray this. Let's put a bit of this dark blue on. No, dark green. And then more yellow. Spray on this. I expect this to be very intense. Well, we've had a spillage. So that's the paper on top, that's the paper underneath. I'm going to do it again, but just as it is. I think spraying the paper for these water-soluble oil pastels is the best move. But obviously, again, variations, you know, in a painting. Water-soluble oil pastel. One. I sensibly just did it with the damp paper when I did it on the linocut. But we should compare. So again, it's softer on the foam than it is on the linocut. But different surfaces are going to give different results, and that's good. Where are you? I couldn't find an elephant on my desk at the moment. It's actually dry, so we're just going to use it. Inktense blocks. Now, I did this in a variety of ways. So the first way is dry to the dry paper. The Inktense aren't going on this as well as they did onto the lino block. Do you know, I'll show you on the lino block. What did I use on that before? Watercolor pencil. Give a wee spray off and clean it off. Just so the results aren't affected. See? Blue. Right, so I'm going to put this onto dry paper. So this is Inktense, dry to dry. Dry to dry is very faint. Next up is, we're going to wet it. Just blotted it a couple of times. There we go. Ah, like that. This time we'll try a dry lino cut on damp paper. Very similar, aren't they? And these are some of the Inktense I did on the yesterday. So that's dry to dry. That's wet to dry. Sorry, wet lino cut to dry paper. That is dry lino cut to wet paper. I'm not sure what that one was. Alcohol markers. So I have this and it's running out. It's a alcohol marker blender, but it's not in the best of shape. I'm just hoping that I can put enough of this on that it stays wet to use on the paper. Okay, that wasn't bad. Now the other thing I did was I used some alcohol hand sanitizer and I put it on the paper, but there's a lot of leakage with that. Also, I found that I couldn't wash this off the linocut very well, so just to be aware of that. Okay. Right, so this will dry fast on the paper. That's pretty nice. It actually works better on the foam because with the linocut, I had a lot of a loss of clarity with it, but I had this as well. Wonder if I'd put that on there. I'm not sure. Anyway, I like those results, but I don't like I like the alcohol markers, but I don't like working with alcohol inks or the alcohol. So this blending pen is running low, so you know, if it was in a much better condition, we might have got better results. It's hard to say. So here they are here. For me, I liked how the poster paint, but there was some Posca pen that came up with that, but that was really nice. I love the pastels, the oil pastel, pan pastel, soft pastel. I think they give a lot and they're easy to work with. The water soluble oil pastels are more interesting, but they're going to take a bit of work to get them, you know, to get a more predictable result. The Posca pen, I think there's a lot of potential here for like creating textures, and because that looks like a solid structure and that's like a wall, so that's like metal and that's like a wall to me. The drawing ink was more successful with the linocut. The watercolor paint, yeah, it's not, I don't know, I don't think it's the most interesting. The ink tints is very good as well. So I'm going to try all this with stencils too. You know what I'm like, I'm just going to keep trying. And then hopefully we'll make some lovely pictures and be able to use it in combination with the gel plate. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you soon. Take care, bye.